Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett entered the federal courtroom with a calm but assertive stride, her head held high and eyes fixed forward. The chamber buzzed with murmurs as people speculated about the bizarre lawsuit that had taken the nation. By storm, Judge Stephen G. Breyer, retired Supreme Court Justice, had allegedly filed a motion to fine Crockett $2 billion for comments she made during a televised congressional hearing. Crockett, known for her unapologetic voice and firm stance on systemic injustice, stood behind the defendant's table, her legal team beside her. The room was packed, the air thick with political tension, media anticipation, unspoken disbelief. Judge Breyer entered next, flanked by legal aides, and his expression betrayed a mixture of frustration and unease. No longer a sitting Supreme Court justice. Breyer had invoked an obscure constitutional loophole, something only the most seasoned legal minds even knew existed, claiming national defamation through reckless rhetoric. The crowd fell silent. He approached the bench with authority and opened with a statement that immediately sparked controversy. "We cannot allow our public servants to dismantle national trust by weaponizing truth without discretion," he declared. Crockett's eyes narrowed as his words echoed like thunder, targeting her integrity rather than her actions. The prosecutor argued that Crockett's statements in the hearing, where she exposed backdoor dealings between certain federal contractors and high-level judicial consultants, had undermined public confidence in the judiciary. He claimed her tone and timing had caused irreparable reputational harm to the courts. Crockett, visibly composed, leaned into her microphone and replied, "Since when did truth become a crime? Yes, exposing corruption shakes public confidence. Maybe the problem isn't the truth, but the system it reveals." The room stirred. Whispers of "she's right" and "this is absurd" trickled through the gallery. Yet Breyer's face remained hardened, focused on precedent, not principle. The courtroom turned tense as Crockett's legal team revealed documentation emails, transcripts, whistleblower testimonial validating her claims. Breyer's team attempted to object, calling the evidence irrelevant to the fine's legality, but the presiding judge overruled. Crockett's lead attorney stated, "This case is not about damage, it's about control." The moment a public servant is punished for telling the truth, democracy itself is on trial. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause before being silenced by a sharp gavel strike. Breyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. For the first time, doubt flickered behind his eyes, though he quickly masked it under years of judicial poise. Crockett then asked to speak on her own behalf. Rising slowly, she addressed not just the courtroom, but the entire nation watching through live broadcasts. "I swore an oath to the Constitution, not to the comfort of powerful men. If uncovering corruption earns me a $2 billion fine, then this court is bankrupt of justice." Her voice was unwavering. "Let it be known, I didn't come here to beg for mercy. I came here to make it clear. Truth will not be silenced, and neither will I." Reporters were already drafting headlines. Breyer turned slightly pale, clearly rattled, but still not yielding. Her next move stunned everyone. She pulled out a handwritten letter, one penned by a former court clerk under Breyer's mentorship, exposing confidential memos where ethical breaches had been buried to preserve legacy. "This is not vengeance. This is accountability," Crockett said. "You taught law students to uphold justice, yet you seek to destroy those who apply it fearlessly." As the letter was entered into evidence, the courtroom audibly gasped. Breyer reached for water with a trembling hand. His stoicism was cracking. His legacy, once spotless and revered, was now being cross-examined not by lawyers, but by truth itself. Opposing counsel objected again, calling the letter emotionally manipulative and outside the legal scope. But the judge disagreed, stating, it reflected a compelling moral contradiction. Breyer was asked to respond. He stood and spoke slowly, his voice thin but deliberate. "Perhaps I underestimated the impact of speech, but intent matters." Crockett rose again. "Yes, intent does matter. That's why I intended to defend a public that's been lied to, exploited, and ignored." Her tone was fire-wrapped in grace. and this time the judge didn't interrupt. Breyer stared at her for a long moment, blinking as if fighting an internal war between pride and conscience. Then came the courtroom's turning point. A surprise witness, a retired judicial ethics investigator, was called to testify, confirmed under oath that Crockett's disclosures were not only accurate but had prompted internal probes months before she spoke out. She didn't defame the judiciary, he said. She protected it. Gasps. Breyer looked down, avoiding eye contact. His legal team whispered urgently, suggesting a recess, but the judge declined. Crockett glanced at Breyer, not with scorn, but with resolve. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I want reform, and I want it now." The statement landed like thunder. The judge recessed for 30 minutes. During the break, social media exploded with support for Crockett. Hashtags like "Truth is not a crime" and "Stand with Jasmine" flooded timelines. Back in the courtroom, the atmosphere had changed. Breyer returned, quieter, his shoulders heavy. When asked if he wished to pursue the full fine, he hesitated. For the first time, his voice cracked. "Perhaps this has gone far enough," but the courtroom demanded clarity. Crockett's team insisted on a full withdrawal of the motion, not mere reduction. The moment hung suspended like breath before a verdict. Breyer stood again, facing the courtroom, and symbolically, the American people. "I sought to preserve the dignity of the judiciary," he said, voice uneven, "but I may have instead threatened it." He paused. "I withdraw the motion." Audible gasps, then applause. Crockett nodded, her expression unreadable but her eyes glistening. The gavel struck for order, but the emotional impact had already swept through the room. One headline reporter typed furiously, "Justice tried to find truth and lost, but it wasn't over." Jasmine cleared her throat and said, "I have one final request before we leave this room. All I ask," she said, "is that this court initiates a broader review into how truth-tellers are treated within government." She looked at Breyer. "Not for me, but for the interns, the aides. The whistleblowers too afraid to speak because they see what happens when someone does." The presiding judge nodded solemnly, stating the request would be formally considered. Breyer looked as if he might speak again, but words failed him. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and unfolded a handkerchief, quietly dabbing his eyes. He was crying silently, but visibly. The courtroom, shocked, remained still. Crockett's composure didn't waver. She wasn't celebrating. She was witnessing the weight of accountability. The rare crack in an institution built on marble and ego. "This isn't a victory," she said. "This is a reckoning." Outside the courtroom, crowds had gathered holding signs that read, "Truth has a defender, and let her speak." Her team exited through the front, deliberately and without hiding. Reporters bombarded her with questions, but she only said, "I said what needed to be said. Now we rebuild." Behind her, Breyer exited quietly out the side door, once a symbol of silence, now swallowed by it. Overnight, news outlets replayed the footage relentlessly. Analysis flooded every channel. Public opinion was nearly unanimous. The fine had been an overreach, an abuse of influence. Legal scholars debated the constitutional implications, but most agreed that Crockett's stand might lead to new protections for public servants exposing misconduct. Editorials praised her, calling her the voice of a generation unafraid of consequence. Breyer, meanwhile, remained out of the spotlight. His office released only one line: "Justice demands we listen, especially when it's uncomfortable." Congress introduced a bill the next week, the Crockett Protection Act, aimed at shielding government officials from retaliatory lawsuits for disclosing verified misconduct. It passed the House within days, fueled by public momentum. Declined interviews, choosing instead to return to her district and meet with constituents. "This isn't about the cameras," she said. "It's about the country." Meanwhile, law students across America began studying the case as a modern landmark in ethical responsibility. Weeks later, an unexpected development, Breyer requested a private meeting with Crockett. She agreed under one condition, that it be documented and shared publicly. In the footage, Breyer admitted that his decision was influenced by pressure from institutional loyalists who feared exposure. "I thought I was protecting something sacred," he said, voice soft. "I didn't realize I was burying what made it sacred to begin with." Crockett listened, then replied, "If we want justice to matter, it has to apply to everyone, even those who write it." Their exchange went viral, becoming a symbol of accountability and reconciliation. Breyer offered to donate a portion of his speaking fees to support legal aid for whistleblowers. Crockett responded with a new initiative, the Truth Defense Fund, designed to provide resources for public servants facing legal threats after exposing corruption. Donations flooded in. Within a month, it had raised over $18 million. Breyer, in a rare gesture, contributed the first $250,000, though redemption would be slow. It had begun, seated in truth, watered by courage. Crockett, now more prominent than ever, refused to run for higher office despite public urging. "I don't want